Hi guys, Moon Fiction here. This is my new channel I decided to switch over to. But if you wish to watch the videos on my other channel, the name of the channel is Dragon What Ifs. But anyway, let's start the video. What if Deku had become a villain Part 1? Beat it, Katsuki shouted as he passed by Izuku Midoriya at the school grounds. Or else I am going to beat your quirkless ass. Izuku stumbled back in fright and covered his face, expecting Katsuki to hit him. As seconds passed, nothing happened, and he slightly opened his eyes to reveal that he was the only one left beside the gate. Great, right in the morning I have to deal with this, Izuku muttered. He grabbed his bag around tighter and glanced at the sky with hopelessness. Izuku looked down and saw Katsuki and his group of friends laugh at what he assumed was him. He regained his composure and thought to himself, one day I'll prove to him that I can be a hero too. Izuku once considered Katsuki his friend, a time when both admired the one true hero, All Might, who would save the day without raising a finger. After everyone's quirks developed in childhood, and Izuku was left behind, their relationship changed for the worst. Gradually it went from name-calling, to segregation, and finally physical abuse. Izuku was a timid boy, and was afraid of losing the one friend he ever had. But as time passed, he wished that he would be left alone. The sun continued to rise, gradually hitting Izuku's face. As he made it into the building, he heard the school bell ring. Izuku's eyes rose up, as he realized that he was late for class. In the classroom, the teacher stood up beside the chalkboard with an attendance sheet. Okay kids, before. Teacher, we're not 5 years old, interrupted one of the students. He put his feet on the table, challenging the teacher to make a move. Another student was about to speak up before a large thud was made from the classroom door. Everyone turned their heads to see the commotion and saw a panting Izuku that looked like as if he ran an entire marathon. You're late, Midoriya, not the best way to start your third year, said the teacher, noting down his tardiness. I'm sorry teacher, I didn't mean to, Izuku said while facing down in order to avoid all the glances his classmates gave him. The teacher looked at Izuku with disapproval, and then faced towards the class. There's only one seat left, sit down so we can start class. Izuku quickly nodded and awkwardly shuffled his way in between the desks. He put down his bag and sat down, hoping to be spared of the embarrassment. Apart from him being quirkless, he's also negligent about school. How useless is he? Whispered one of the students, just loud enough for Izuku to hear. Izuku suddenly felt a small impact from the back of his chair. He looked back and saw Katsuki gesture towards him. Izuku swallowed through his throat and wished he would die. Guess we're having fun all year long, Deku, said Katsuki with a grin. That's enough talking all of you, we're already behind schedule, announced the teacher. Now since it's the first day of class, I'll forgive your behavior, but remember that this year, you will be applying for the high school of your choice. Some of the students cheered. I know that most of you want to become heroes, and some have even proclaimed that they will be applying for UA Academy. The teacher looked towards Katsuki and gave him a small nod. However, there are also those that need to set realistic goals and not apply to UA. Izuku froze. In the summer he was sent a paper from the school asking him what his future plans were. But he did not assume that the teacher would make it public. He slowly looked around the class and noticed that everyone was looking at him again. Before he could speak up, the entire class erupted in laughter. Him? Midoriya become a hero? Asked one girl to his left. She covered her face with pity. He's a quirkless nobody, and he wants to get into UA. said another student. The teacher let the class laugh for a few more seconds, after which he demanded silence. A tiny smirk was still seen from his face. Izuku felt defeated, his legs shook, and tears slowly formed up in his eyes. He gripped his hands and he felt the death stares that Katsuki was giving him. He knew that he wasn't getting off lightly after school. Afternoon had long passed with the final class bells ringing. Izuku quickly rose up from his chair and made a sprint from the classroom. As he exited the back of the school, he could hear Katsuki shouting behind him. "Get back here, Deku, you quirkless little shit." Izuku was terrified, with his only option being to run as fast as his legs could take him. He set his sights at the school exit and made a sharp turn, barely dodging Katsuki that used his explosion quirk to speed himself up. Wait, Kakan, please think about what you are doing," yelled Izuku. Katsuki ignored his pleas. "I don't give a shit, and I'm going to break your nose for calling me that." Izuku continued to run for his life, but his body could not keep up any longer. He turned his head to look at the distance between them, only to see Katsuki land a kick on his face. The blow caused Izuku to tumble several feet before hitting a concrete wall in a park playground. Izuku's vision was blurry from the blood dripping down his forehead. He began to breathe heavily and felt a sharp pain in his chest. His voice left him, unable to scream for help as he could see Katsuki gradually approach him. "Goddamn bastard, thinking you'd get away from me," Katsuki said with an annoyed look. "There's no one around here to save you, Deku, and I swear I'll make it painful." He cracked his knuckles while facing down towards Izuku. Stop. Kakan, I'm sorry," cried out Izuku. He wanted it to be over. He could no longer tolerate the pain and misery he had to face every day. Katsuki swung a large kick into Izuku's stomach. "Huh?" he asked. "I thought I told you already not to call me that." Izuku gasped for air. He grabbed his stomach in pain and his head fell onto the ground. Katsuki knelt and grabbed Izuku's green hair, slowly bringing up his face to his own. "You want to get into you, eh?" he asked with a serious tone. "I thought I made it clear that I will be the first and only person from this school to get in there. Are you trying to make fun of me?" Izuku felt cold. Shivering in fear, he was not able to answer him. Izuku's face had swelled up from the initial kick Katsuki gave him. He could no longer feel his body move, yet everything hurt. "Answer me. Are you stupid?" Katsuki shouted. He looked at his former friend and removed his grip. Katsuki turned to his left and saw a notebook protruding out of Izuku's backpack. For a moment he felt that he went too far until he saw its title. He grabbed the book and scanned through the first few pages. "What the hell is this?" Katsuki said. "You must be kidding me." Izuku barely understood what Katsuki meant. He was not able to see or hear properly. He attempted to get up, but his arms failed to move. No matter how hard he tried, his strength failed him. "I really am useless, aren't I?" Izuku thought. "Just because I have no quirk." Hero analysis for the future, Katsuki read. "You think a quirkless reject like you can compete with anyone?" Izuku remained on the ground. He was afraid that he would die. "Wake up, Deku, it's no time to be asleep," said Katsuki. He picked up Izuku once more and began to lightly tap his face. Izuku woke up from his daze and screamed at the sight of Katsuki. He crawled back up against the wall where he was first thrown at. "Geez," said Katsuki as he cleared his ear with his finger. finally back to your senses. Izuku saw Katsuki get closer from the corner of his eye. The day had grown darker with the sun slowly moving down. He could hear once again the branches that stirred gently in the wind, scratching at one another. Izuku opened his mouth to plead with Katsuki one last time, and the words seemed to freeze in his throat. He looked at the notebook that Katsuki held, the one and only medium for where he felt he could express his ideas and love for the hero world. Katsuki noticed Izuku's sight, and a large grin formed on his face. "That gives me a great idea, Deku." Katsuki pointed to the notebook. "For a quirkless piece of shit like you, this thing is useless. Give it back." Izuku shouted, finally being able to speak. He attempted to grab it, but Katsuki was quicker on the draw. "You wish," said Katsuki. He stood up and placed the notebook between his hands. "Rather, I think it deserves something better." Izuku's eyes widened in horror as he witnessed Katsuki explode it. Small pieces of burned paper fell to the ground, leaving almost nothing recognizable. "There, much better," Katsuki said. He stomped on the remaining pieces that were still burning. Izuku could no longer hold it in. The anger that dwelled inside him had risen to the point where it overtook all of his emotions. He yelled and attempted to swing at Katsuki several times with his fist, missing completely. "That's the spirit, but who said you can hit me?" Katsuki asked mockingly. Before Izuku could respond, Katsuki placed his hand over his face and caused a small explosion. "Just a little goodbye present for you," Katsuki sneered as he lifted his hand. The blast caused Izuku to lose consciousness. His lifeless body lay on the ground. Izuku began to hear a deafening sound that grew louder and louder. "Where am I?" he thought. His vision was black, and as time passed, he slowly began to see again. The sound he heard earlier was rain pouring down on him as he lay in the playground. He looked at the cloud-filled sky. He wasn't sure if the tears that passed down his cheeks were from him. Why even bother trying to become a hero? Izuku asked to himself as he clutched his chest. What did I do to deserve this? Izuku tried to stand up several times, hitting the wet muddy ground. Work legs, damn it work! Izuku shouted in grief. He punched his legs several times before giving up and shifting his head downward. His belongings lay beside him, destroyed either from Katsuki or the rain. Izuku began to laugh slightly, placing his hands on his face. The mix of emotions confused him. It reminded him of the time when he first learned as a kid that he would never get a quirk. Seconds passed as Izuku calmed down. He pulled away from his hands and noticed that there was blood. He quickly reached over to his backpack and removed the cloth to dry his face. He attempted once again to stand up, this time successful. I got to get back home. Mom must be worried sick by now, muttered Izuku underneath his breath. His knees shook as he bent down to grab his bag. Izuku completely ignored how beat up he was. What time is it? Izuku looked over at his watch with slanted eyes. It read 10:37 p.m. Mom is definitely going to kill me, Izuku thought. How am I going to explain this? Izuku stumbled across the playground. He made his way across the street hoping no one would see him in his state. He grabbed the wall across him, making sure that he did not fall again. His head was still dizzy from earlier. He felt as if time slowed down drastically. What do we have here? Asked a voice. People like you shouldn't be walking outside at this time. Izuku turned to the direction of the voice, but was unable to discern who it was. A little on the slow side. The figure stepped towards Izuku. Well, That doesn't matter to me anyways. Izuku looked up once more. The figure was indiscernible, and he could not make out its features. Before he could ask any questions, the shadow was gone. Izuku jumped out of fear until a hand appeared on his shoulder. "What's wrong, young man? You shouldn't be walking around this late at night," said a familiar voice. "I know," Izuku said. He stood up carefully while still in shock from what happened. "Are you injured? Are you Ak?" asked the man. "Yeah, I tripped earlier and hit my face pretty hard," Izuku lied as he turned around. In front of him stood the man he admired since as early as he could remember, All Might, the hero of heroes. Izuku's mouth opened wide, and the fan inside of him took over. "Oh my god, All Might. Is that really you? Holy. Ahhh. It's a pleasure to meet you," Izuku said while shaking his hands up and down. All Might looked flustered. "Oh, you are a fan of me?" he asked. "Holy cow, yes. I watched all of your specials and got all the special edition mini figurines," Izuku exclaimed with excitement. He never expected All Might to show up out of nowhere, and at the time, when he needed him the most. "Well, it's great to hear that you are Ak, young man," All Might said. "In that case, I must head off, patrolling the streets and all that. Make sure to get home quickly." Before he could take off, he was interrupted by an unexpected shout. "All Might!" Izuku faced towards him. He knew he would never get to ask if he didn't do it now. "Even if I don't have a quirk, can I become a hero?" His feet trembled with nervousness. "Can even someone without a quirk be like you?" All Might looked at the boy. "Heroes are always risking their lives for others. I cannot simply say that you can become a hero even without a quirk." I see." Izuku stared at All Might, he could barely let out a voice. "If you want to help others, then you could become a police officer," All Might said calmly. "Regardless of how others view them, it's still a respectable occupation. It's not bad to dream, but you also have to consider what is realistic." All Might leapt into the air, leaving him alone in the street. Izuku continued to face the direction his hero stood a few moments ago, unable to understand the conversation he had. Izuku faced back and walked home slowly. In the Midoriya household, the main entrance creaked open. Inko Midoriya rushed over and greeted her son. "It's almost midnight, I've been worried sick," Inko said. She followed her disoriented son through the hallway. "Where have you been, Izuku, and what are these bruises?" "I kind of fell down when I was walking home, and some elderly couple insisted I go to the hospital," Izuku said while shifting his eyes away from his mother. Inko was worried he was lying to run away from his problems, but she was glad to see him safe. "Then why did the hospital not call me?" Izuku stared at the floor. "They said it wasn't anything serious, so they let me go after doing some checkups." "Well, alright then, but make sure to be careful, Izuku. You know I love you, so talk to me if anything is on your mind," Inko said with a warm look. "I see your backpack got ruined from the weather, I'll go ahead and wash it for you. Go get some rest." "Sure thing, Mom. Night," Izuku said. Izuku closed the door to his room and sat on his bed. His body hurt, and it was difficult for him to move even then. He looked at all the All Might merchandise that was spread across his room. It finally dawned upon him what he went through that day. "Why do I exist?" Izuku asked himself. "No one believes in me, not my mom, not Kakang, and not even All Minus," Izuku broke down. He couldn't stop the tears streaming down his face as he collapsed and started crying hysterically. Izuku opened his eyes. The morning sun rays had pierced through the window in the room, crossing his face. Izuku turned to the left, blocking the sun with his back. He had cried all night from what transpired the day before, scared to relive those memories again. Izuku stayed motionless, staring at the wall in front of him. A large poster of All Might towered over, presenting the hero in all his glory. In the past, Izuku would squeal from excitement every time he saw it, but now it reminded him of the face that told him his dream was not achievable. Izuku raised his arm to remove the poster. Before he could do it, he was interrupted by a knock on his door. "Izuku dear, it's time to get ready for school," Inko said through the door. "I've made your favorite dish, so don't take too long, or it'll get cold." In his room, Izuku did not move. He lowered his right arm, as he looked at the poster with a blank stare. "Izuku, is everything all right?" He exited his trance, realizing his mother called for him. "Yeah, I'm coming," Izuku responded with a dejected voice. Inko stood by the door, not certain what to do. She wanted to comfort him. Over time, their once and happy relationship degraded into isolation from one another. Even then, she could not stand by him when he needed her the most. Inko looked at the door for a few more seconds before deciding to go back into the living room. The light had begun to cover Izuku's room. He stood up from his bed and closed the window blinds. His body was still sore from the beatings Katsuki gave him. Izuku walked over to his mirror to see large bags under his eyes. He was not able to sleep the entire night. Izuku moved towards his door and opened it slowly. The school bag that his mother washed lay still on the hardwood floor. Izuku picked it up and headed towards the front door. "Wait, Izuku, I thought you were going to have breakfast," Inko said. Izuku continued putting on his shoes. "I'm not hungry, Mom, I'll just get something at school later," Izuku replied. Before Inko could respond back, he closed the door and left. The wind had pushed cherry blossom petals around the school, covering the ground with a pleasant kalau. By the school gates, Katsuki and his friends stood by waiting. Izuku continued walking forward, disregarding the obvious trap that had been set up. "Hey Deku," Katsuki said irritatingly. "Where do you think you're going?" Izuku kept walking. He faced the school, not realizing Katsuki was addressing him. "You really messed him up, didn't you, huh?" asked one boy in his group. "Or is he just not afraid of you anymore?" Katsuki flashed in anger and raised his fist. "Listen to me when I am talking to you, quirkless nobody," he shouted, moving forward and landing a punch in the back of Izuku's head. The punch was strong enough to make Izuku fall. He lay on the hard-covered dirt before slowly getting up and continuing to walk ahead, unfazed from what happened. Katsuki looked at Izuku, bewildered from what he had just witnessed. This only angered him more. "That goddamn Deku thinks he's better than me?" Katsuki challenged. He let out some small explosions from his palms before he was stopped by one of his friends. "Hey Katsuki, be careful, one of the teachers might see us," he said. "Just get him later when no one else is around." Katsuki continued to stare at Izuku. He deactivated his quirk and scoffed at what transpired. "I'll meet you guys up ahead in class, I've got to tell him something." His voice was hoarse with unwarranted fury. "He deserves what's coming for him." Katsuki walked over to the boy he had just hit. He placed his arm around Izuku's shoulder and leaned over. "When lunch break hits, meet me outside class," Katsuki said. "And don't you dare and try to run away from me." Katsuki let go of his grip, tapping his hand against Izuku's head as he headed towards class. Katsuki's friends from earlier ran past Izuku, also hitting his head one by one. While Izuku had been walking, his mind strafed all over the place. He did not care about where he was, and who did what to him. His dreams of becoming a hero were shattered, and the boy that bullied him would get everything he ever wanted. Izuku entered the classroom, passing through the back and sitting down on his chair. He looked at the window. A glass building was seen in the distance with a large logo displaying UL. "Look, guys, he's staring at you again," pointed out a classmate that was standing beside Izuku. Everyone laughed, with a few students that threw slander at him. Quirkless freak was an insult Izuku heard often. A day ago, he would have been crying over it, but now he paid no attention to them. His mind would not listen, even if he wanted to. The classroom door closed as the homeroom teacher entered. The entire room quieted down, and the students went to their seats. The school bells rang immediately after. Midoriya. "Hello, Midoriya." Izuku looked up and saw the teacher facing him, waving his hand across his face. "It's already lunchtime, go get something to eat," he said. Izuku stood up casually and turned towards the door. "Oh, and Midoriya, if I catch you staring at ponies in the sky again during class, I'll give you detention." Izuku nodded and closed the door behind him. To his surprise, Katsuki was slanted against the wall with his arms crossed, tapping his fingers furiously. "It took you long enough, Deku, are you fucking deaf or something?" Katsuki asked. "I was going to beat your ass after the teacher left, but you got lucky." Izuku looked at Katsuki. He wondered what his bully would do to him next. "Perhaps he'll break my arm this time, or I don't know, something else," Izuku wondered to himself. Thoughts that would have scared him to death seemed to go through his mind nonchalantly. "Did you forget what I told you this morning?" Katsuki asked with an annoyed look. Izuku did not answer. Katsuki looked at him again. The way Izuku acted with disinterest pissed him off beyond measure. Katsuki bit his lip and pointed to the stairs leading upwards. "Follow me, Deku, we need to talk." Izuku did not answer. Katsuki looked at him again. The way Izuku acted with disinterest pissed him off beyond measure. Katsuki bit his lip and pointed to the stairs leading upwards. "Follow me, Deku, we need to talk." Both walked up the stairs, with Izuku trailing behind Katsuki. Izuku did not know what Katsuki wanted, only that it was pointless to run. Katsuki took out a set of keys from his pocket as they reached the final floor. He grabbed the handle of the door and opened it with a key, revealing an open area on the school roof. A large gust of wind passed through them, which caused Izuku's hair to point up. "Go through the door," Katsuki ordered. Izuku reluctantly walked through and looked at the bright blue sky. Katsuki closed the door behind him, leaving the keys inside. "Do you know why I called you here, Deku?" Katsuki asked with a large grin. Izuku looked back down towards Katsuki. The two made eye contact with each other. "If I were to guess, it's nothing that benefits me," Izuku said. "Oh, it benefits you all right," Katsuki responded back, laughing. He pointed towards Izuku. "Perhaps I haven't made it clear to you that you're useless. You're a nobody. And I don't like the way you've been acting since this morning. Was that everything you wanted to say?" Izuku asked, putting his hands inside his pockets. The wind caused the air to feel much colder than it was. "Is this where you go and beat me up because I'm different?" Izuku was about to say something else until Katsuki ran up towards him and kicked Izuku's side. Izuku stumbled back, catching himself by landing his arms on the concrete floor. The kick hit Izuku's ribs. The pain caused him to cough and gasp for air several times. "So what?" Katsuki asked. He walked up to the injured boy and placed his foot on top of him. Katsuki then pushed him, which caused Izuku to collapse on the ground. "Stop trying to act like a smartass, Deku. I'm quite frankly fed up with how you're acting now. Did you stop and think about how that makes me look in front of others?" Izuku groaned in pain. He clenched his side as Katsuki began to walk over to him. "I'm getting tired of this," whispered Izuku to himself. "Speak up, you quirkless fuck," Katsuki shouted. He landed another kick, this time on the head. For a moment Izuku was filled with a terrible and loud ringing noise. No matter how hard he tried to get rid of it, it came back in intervals. Izuku tried to cover his ears, but it did not help. Katsuki's eyes lit up. He finally saw Izuku react to pain as he did in the past. "There we go, now that wasn't so hard, was it?" Katsuki bent his knees down. He took pleasure in looking at Izuku suffer. "Remember when I said us being here would benefit you?" Katsuki said. "I truly meant it." He picked up Izuku by the collar and faced him towards a small rail that looped around the edges of the school roof. "You see that horizon? That's your way out. Maybe then you'll be born with a quirk." Katsuki continued gripping Izuku tightly. "Now go on then, do it. No one will care." Izuku looked at Katsuki through the top of his eyes. He once again felt despair, but his mind had left him. Izuku started thrashing in terror, speaking incoherent sentences as tears streamed down his face. Katsuki looked at him. "If you're not going to do it, then I'll help you." Katsuki overpowered Izuku with physical strength alone and began moving him closer to the ledge. "They'll think it's just suicide, a poor miserable kid who killed himself because he had no quirk." The wind had grown stronger and muffled any sounds that were heard from above. Katsuki continued to drag Izuku closer. He laughed to himself. "Think of it as me helping you, Deku. I am only making it easier for you," Katsuki said. "Don't lie to yourself, you know you want to do it." Izuku did not attempt to break free. The amount of psychological and physical stress had led him into a state of extreme madness. Suddenly, his mind went clear, and a shadow appeared in front of him, sitting on the edge of the roof. It looked out towards the city. Has it finally gotten to the grand finale? The shadow contemplated. "You know, I wonder sometimes how you dealt with this, but now I see that you are weak." Time had slowed down once again. Izuku looked at the shadow once more. Its features were incomplete, yet oddly resembled a human. "You have a few seconds left before your fate is sealed. Once you fall off this roof, plunging to your death, people will scream in horror. But when they learn it was you, you will only become a joke, an afterthought to them." "What are?" Izuku paused. "Are you God?" "Far from it, yet I am surprised you haven't recognized me," the figure answered in a flat voice. It turned around to face Izuku. "I am the manifestation of your hatred, I am you." Izuku could see a faint smile. "You've just kept me hidden away, ignoring that I exist. And now here I am, offering you a way to survive," the shadow said with a caring tone. "Help me," Izuku pleaded without a second thought. He began to cry once more, whether it was out of fear or not. It was the first time anyone truly extended him a welcoming hand. He accepted reality. "Good, I am glad you have chosen me," said the shadow. parts of its body and face started to shape into Izuku's image. It gave off a large smile, but it did not feel warm. Katsuki picked up Izuku and placed his chest on top of the rail. He noticed Izuku's body slump forward without any resistance. Did he pass out? Katsuki thought. Katsuki felt something odd occur before he was it. Show yourself. Katsuki froze when he saw Izuku standing in front of him. Who do you think it was, Kakang? Something wrong with your head now? Izuku asked, pointing his finger at his own. What the f***, Katsuki said before he was interrupted. Let me finish, I've sort of grown impatient, letting you speak all the time, Izuku pointed out. Katsuki could not move. Izuku's actions confused him. Is that really the Deku I know? Katsuki thought. This is hilarious, just look at your face, Izuku said with a smile. He brought his body forward, tilting his head to the side. I know what you're thinking. And yes, it's still me, but I can thank you for finally driving me to this point. It feels refreshing. Katsuki clenched his fists. Deep down there was a small part of him that was afraid. But it was still the Deku he knew that was standing in front of him. So, you finally went nuts. Katsuki taunted Izuku. Gives me a better excuse to beat the shit out of you. In the distance, the school bell rang. Katsuki put his fists up and charged towards Izuku. He swung his right arm at head level. Izuku quickly ducked. He felt Katsuki's hand pass through his hair. Izuku attempted to laugh at his attempt but was quickly hit in the stomach from a left jab. Not so tough are you now? Katsuki asked. He picked up Izuku and pushed him towards the ledge. Izuku barely managed to not fall off by hitting the guardrail. Katsuki walked towards Izuku, but was instantly grabbed around his torso. The fight turned into a grappling match, with both sides hitting each other, with whatever arm or leg they could use. Get off me, damn it, Katsuki said. He punched Izuku in the back several times before his leg slipped and both fell. Before Katsuki realized what happened, he looked up and saw Izuku holding his hand. His body lay swinging on the side of the school building. Izuku attempted to hold on as hard as he could. He did not know why, but his body moved on its own. Is this what you wanted, Deku? Katsuki asked with a slight crack in his voice. Tell me. Izuku ignored Katsuki. He tried his best to hold on using all the strength he had left. The commotion was seen from below, with a gym teacher and a few students seeing a student being held with one hand. Katsuki began to form tears in his eyes. He did not want to die. Deku. Katsuki cried out. Izuku tried to reassure Katsuki he would be safe, but at that moment he felt his grip slip. Izuku watched in silence as Katsuki fell. His back faced the ground as he looked into Izuku's eyes. Izuku tried to reassure Katsuki he would be safe, but at that moment he felt his grip slip. Izuku watched in silence as Katsuki fell. His back faced the ground as he looked into Izuku's eyes. Screams were heard across the entire school, as most classes peered out of the windows to see where the sounds were coming from earlier. All they saw was a student's body laying on the ground, lifeless. Izuku moved back from the ledge and stared blankly at what he had witnessed. He did not want Katsuki to die, but deep in his mind, he felt as if he was relieved from a pain in his heart. Izuku touched his face and felt that his lips had arched up slightly. There was no fear, no pain, no feeling of guilt, only laughter. This is the end of part 1. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe. Anyway, bye now, and have a good rest of your day/night.